Baltimore, and I don't want to call him one of my old friends because I still think of him as being about 30, and he still thinks of me about being about 12 because we've known each other that long. But he has a new book out, and we've been talking about this damn thing since, I don't know, about 2007, it feels like. But it's actually out on the 4th of July. The streak is now out. Our local pal via Dallas and longtime Baltimore Sun scribe, John Eisenberg, joins us again right on the eve of football and the trading deadline. Boy, you got plenty of juicy things to talk about as you're out calling all over the country promoting the book on Cal Ripken and Lou Gehrig, right, John?
Definitely. And what's funny is I've called all over, and, this Ravens stuff, it's in my bio, and a lot of these people will pick up on it. You say you're on in Omaha, Nebraska, they'll, the host will say, hey, Danny Woodhead's a good friend of our show. He's a good Cornhusker, and how's he looking this year? I've been doing Ravens stuff all along with it. It's pretty funny the way it gets looped in.
Can I ask you a question? This is a stupid question, and I don't know about the book itself and the words Iron Man. Where did that term come from? Did you research that? Because that's one of the dumb questions I thought. You know what? Next time I have Eisenberg on, I'm going to ask him the genesis. Why not steel? Was that taken by Superman or something?
Well, no, Superman. This I happen to know, not related to the book, was in the late 30s. So that's when Superman debuted on the American scene.
But he was the man of steel, not the man of iron. Why iron,
right. That I don't know, except that, iron. I mean, you go back to I have traced the use of the nickname in baseball. And the original Iron Man, or the use of it, was for a pitcher who would, you go back to the 1900s, they took no care of arms, and guys would pitch both ends of double headers, and stuff like that. That you go back and look at the innings pitched from there, it's like 450 innings, for a season. And so there was
he only pitched 14 innings today, right? I mean, it was literally like that, right?
yeah. And so there was a guy named George McGinnity, who, they were all like, Irish guys that got into fights. And I mean, it was incredible, but his nickname was Iron Man, George Iron Man McGinnity, because he, just pitched an absurd number of innings one season. So that was an Iron Man in baseball really through, until the 1920s, really until Lou Gehrig. I mean, you just don't really see it framed as an Iron Man until, a little before Gehrig started playing. And why it was iron over steel, I have no idea, except in that era, certainly producing iron was a huge, huge American industry. And so, maybe that was just a representation of strength.
Iron sharpens iron, right? I've heard that one.
Well, that's a John Harbaugh favorite. He uses that one a lot. And iron sharpens iron. And they called Lou Gehrig the Iron Horse. I mean, that was his nickname. So iron did seem to be the flavor of strength at that time.
Man, you've written books about so many things, whether it was Cotton Bowl days and Green Bay and the mighty Packers, and you've written horse racing books, which is a little bit off the beaten path, although I know, privately you've always had that affinity from covering the Preakness and the Triple Crown events. For the Ripken book, and for now that the baby is born and it's actually out, do you go back to the beginning of this whole thing and think that the first time you ran into Cal Ripken as a young scribe here on the Orioles beat back in the 80s, that this would be the type of thing that would, really appeal to you? I mean, look, John, I've known you a long time. I mean, feels like you put down about 3 years of your life into this project, right?
4.5.
4.5, okay.
4.5 is what it became. And the original idea, this is the same publisher. I've got a great publisher. I'm very fortunate, Houghton Mifflin, and this is my 4th book with them. And when my last one on the Dallas AFL NFL was done, 2012, they're saying, what's next? And, you're crazy to turn that down. So, my original idea was, since I was writing all football all the time now with the Ravens, I said, I want to do some baseball. And the old writer's credo, of course, is you write what you know. And so what did I know? I knew that, I was there for all that Ripken stuff. And here we are 2 decades later. And I thought, well, I'm going to turn this thing over, and how can I make it original, different? And so I originally thought, well, I'm going to compare the two streaks. It's just, interesting because baseball is just so completely different when Gehrig played than when Ripken played. You can really get into some interesting things. But then, as soon as I got into it, I realized that this is a large easel I've taken on here, because you can't tell the story of these two guys without telling the story of the record of consecutive games, which really is so curious. It's such a weird record where all you have to do is play, and some people criticize you for it, and it's such an unusual record, and that really became a third figure in the narrative, and that took me forever. I mean, I'm going back to the very beginning of baseball, and I'm taking it all the way through today, because there are no more Iron Man streaks. So it became a very large task, and I enjoyed it, but it just took a long time.
I think it's one of those things that 22 years ago, and I'm sure you and I were sitting 15 feet away, because I was in the Real Media in 1995 and in the press box for that game. We always heard at that time, well, this will never happen again. I think that was one of those things. It was very easy to believe it would never happen again, right? And now as we sit here a quarter of a century later, I don't think anyone would ever attempt to do it, right? It's all, or that any organization would allow it, or that any agent would want their player, in the prime of their career. No one would want Manny Machado taking on 2,100 games in a row right now. He wouldn't be as valuable to the team in that way. I think it's thought of differently now, isn't it?
Completely. Really, what you discover is that Cal did it. He did it on philosophy. There's no doubt his dad. You know the story. His dad ingrained it in him, and you should be out there, and it was a philosophy, and all that. Anyone's philosophy, in many respects, has been supplanted now by science, is the best way I can describe it. They have these analytics and all these reasons to rest guys, and so no one's even attempting it. It used to be you just rolled out your best players and you went for it. But now on a given night, you may rest your best hitter because his backup has better numbers against the starter or something like that. And so it's become more scientific, and so playing every day is just not pragmatic. That's the word that I would use, and no one's more aware of that than Cal. He called me back one day and said, "Hey, have you looked and seen go look up what Joe Madden did with Longoria in 2010, just rested him one day for no reason." He said, "Look that up." He says, that tells you." Cal called me with this to say, put it in the book. Because that's kind of the death knell of consecutive game streaks. Here's Longoria, a guy who probably could have had a pretty good streak, but Madden just rested him one day, and he said, "We don't want another streak like Cal, so we're resting him." And just said it. And that was 2010. So right there, you can blow taps for the whole thing pretty much.
Well, and I guess that's what makes the book sort of eternal from your perspective of researching it. The part for me locally, though, with Cal, and maybe it's because you and I have rubbed elbows with him for the better part of 30 years now, and we've read stories, you've written stories. Everyone on earth, came in here in 1995 and wrote about him, right? And, it was the national news. It feels like every little nugget, even the fight, the Hasselman-Messina, Sutcliffe brawl, and I know you were there for that Sunday afternoon deal where he got rolled up underneath the pile and almost, those stories are all kind of well told. I would think from your perspective, you knew all of that. It was everything else that you were trying to fill in around this thing that, sort of occupied a lot of your time and a lot of my time in the 90s discussing it as well, especially when Cal was batting .212 and batting third in the lineup every night. We were wondering, well, maybe he should take a day off, right?
Yeah. My goal, it was sort of twofold. Number one was context. Definitely got to put this thing in context. And, that's what Gehrig is, and that's what all these things that we were just talking about, about why there are no more days off. There's a big context with days off. I wanted to put his accomplishment, which I saw so much of, put it in context. And the other thing was those stories you talked about. Certainly I've heard of them, but my whole goal was to new voices, new perspectives. If I'm going to do this, then, I want to hear from people that I haven't heard from before. Like the first chapter of the book is my rendering of 21-31. And I talked to a fan, I talked to a cop, I talked to Al Clark, the umpire, I talked to people who were in the other dugout, I wanted to hear people whose voices I had. Talked to Jimmy Tyler, was in the visiting clubhouse. I wanted to hear voices of people that I hadn't heard before. So that was my goal, and I tried to carry that all the way through.
I'm writing the Peter Principles. I've been reading it, and I just read that portion, maybe like Chapter 4, Chapter 5, early in the Angelos era. But Phil Regan was the manager, right? I mean, the makeup of that team was also a little kind of strange because that year they were a bad team, and they had been a bad team for a number, for almost a decade, quite frankly, during the first decade of Ripken after the '83 World Series. The Orioles kind of had some dark years there at the end of Memorial Stadium and into Camden Yards. That was a streak that never really saw a lot of playoff activity either, right?
I'm trying to think.
89, right? Obviously,
well,
but
no playoffs there. I mean, none. And between 84 through 95, the Orioles are not in the playoffs. I mean, they contended a few years, and the year they canceled the World Series, they were close.
But there was no wild card. I mean, they played out a lot of strings. There were a lot of those games where the last 80, 90 games of every year were just playing to the finish line in a lot of those years.
Yeah, and that's what was interesting, talking to some guys, Mickey Tettleton, talking to different guys, looking back on it, they're just laughing. I mean, Mickey Tettleton was like, you know what the players were saying? This is Mickey talking. He says, the game streak was great, but what was ridiculous was to watch Cal come out there every day at like 4 o'clock, and take, hours of infield and batting practice and just prepare like a maniac for every game, meaningless or not. That's what the players remember. That's, we all remember different things. That's what his teammates remember almost more than the games. He said, because of course infield, some of it has kind of disappeared, and it's no longer really part of the pregame ritual at the major leagues. And it used to be a long grind to spend a couple hours in the sun before you played. And Ripken was just a fanatic, complete fanatic, and his teammates more than anything would say, look at that, I mean, what is up with that, aside from playing in all the games in a row on these meaningless nights, one after the other?
I think about the home runs on those nights. I think about the big white lettering out, and obviously the one moment in time and all of that. But I also, that summer, I was in my 4th year of covering the Orioles, my 4th year of doing radio. It was 95. It was the year after the strike year. And all of the Cal saving baseball and all that went into that, I think the most amazing thing that I have never seen, ever done, will ever see again, that never really is talked about, and I don't know if you really covered it much in the book, but it was in that June, July, August period leading up to the streak, where literally every single night, and the team stunk, he would sign autographs down on the field after the game. I would go down in the 6th or 7th inning, and people would start lining up and queuing up at Camden Yards to snake around the ballpark, sometimes with a popcorn, a piece of cardboard that they wanted Cal Ripken to sign. And he sat there and signed, I don't want to say thousands, but it certainly was hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of autographs after baseball games in the middle of that period of time where in a lot of places they were still booing baseball players and fans weren't coming back. And, inevitably the Montreal Expos would never be the same again. But in that summer, Cal didn't just play and do media and take on all of that. He really kind of brought the fans along with him that summer. And that's something that, for the streak and in previous years, it maybe wasn't as celebrated in that way. And I think everyone's familiar with Lou Gehrig's Luckiest Man in the World speech and all of that ties this thing together. But that'll also never be done. A dude signing autographs all night, every night.
That's for sure. Yeah, I witnessed that. I remember standing in the Metrodome, it's midnight. I've written my column, and I'm done. And, the press box is emptying out. It's the old, how are you going to get a cab and get back to the hotel? And Cal is standing down there. There's a line snaking through the lower bowl of the Metrodome. And it's midnight. And I'm just thinking, look at this. I mean,
I kind of forgot that he had done it on the road, John. I only really thought about it on the home games. And the question for the ushers was always, is Cal signing tonight? Yeah. I mean, and the answer was usually yeah.
And you know what thing Phil Regan told me? I mean, I thought it was very interesting. He said that the bus was held up all the time on the road, leaving town, because Cal would promise, you know, I mean, he would sign memorabilia for the other clubhouse. You know, they would make requests, and it's common courtesy. You know, in baseball, if somebody on the other team wants a ball signed for their girlfriend or their dad or whatever it is, you know, you do it. And so Cal Regan said the amount of requests he was receiving was ridiculous. You know, in the hundreds on a weekend series somewhere. And after the last game, he would sit there and sign these bats and balls and gloves or whatever, and they would just hold the bus. You know, he couldn't do it before the game, and because he was getting ready to play the game, and so he would do it after the last game, and they would just sit there and wait. And it sometimes was over an hour, sometimes even longer. They would just wait. I guess they're chartering, so it didn't matter. So they're just waiting for Cal to finish signing.
He has been a friend of mine and a mentor for the better part of 3 decades. His new book is The Streak. Lou Gehrig, Cal Ripken Jr. and baseball's most historic record. You can find it anywhere books are sold. I still write them. He still writes them. We hope you still read them. And you can follow him out at B. Moore Eisenberg. And, you know, he hasn't quit his day job, which is going to get a little more sweaty beginning next week, as it will for our Luke Jones, who's also in our little sports circle around here. Ravens are going to take the field next week, John. And this is an interesting couple of weeks, I think, leading up to the trading deadline for the Orioles, and they've managed to capture the public's imagination over the last 5 years in some way. I think a lot of folks now, where the Orioles are and where their pitching is, that the pressure's much more on the Ravens all of a sudden, right? They have to hold serve here and give the fans an interesting season, because certainly the Orioles aren't about to do that for anyone.
Doesn't look like it. That's for sure. I mean, one of these times we spoke, I remember thinking, well, I'm not quite ready to give up on this season.
But this is the one. This is the visit where you're going to give up on them, huh?
Oh, totally. I mean, I mean, you got to be crazy not to. I mean, I mean, this is not breaking news. I can't remember their starting rotation being this bad ever. And this is a team. I do take a step back, and people say, to me, "Oh, I've never seen the Orioles this bad." I said, "Dude, where have you been? I mean, were you there for Ty Wigington T-shirt night?" That's what I always want to say to them. I mean,
hey, were you there the night Oswaldo Peraza made those starts in '88? I was. I remember that.
Yeah, I mean, the 021. I mean, we could go. I could give you a nice little history lesson on when the Orioles, and they've been worse than they are this year, way worse. But, that is a fact. But the pitching is bad. It's a mess, and there's no getting out of it. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's time to, I think it's time to recalibrate things a little bit. It's not going to happen this year. That doesn't mean it can't happen if they don't sell some pieces and get some players, the right kind of players back. I mean, it's not an utter disaster is what I'm saying. They have some talent on this team, and it's young talent. But, they got some work to do.
John, you write these happy books about streaks and Cotton Bowl days and racehorses and all that good stuff. All of my books have had happy endings with parades, except for the Peter Principles. And, next week I am, recapping in your work, the work of Ken Rosenthal and Buster Olney and Peter Schmuck and Mike Litwin. And, I go down the list. I mean, from Kornheiser and Feinstein and Boswell. I mean, all the people that have covered the Orioles. This is the period of time where old guys like you and I and smart guys who've witnessed this really have to scratch our head and say, what the hell are they doing and who's in charge? They have a crazy 88-year-old man who may or may not have all of his wits about him at this point. They have this kid in Machado who's hitting 230. He has more value than anything that they've had in recent times. They're coming up on this trading deadline. And all we learn about, much like the president of this country, are all the little petty beefs. We're not going to deal relievers to the Nationals. We can't deal with the Red Sox and the Yankees. Well, if you're not going to deal with the good teams, who are you going to deal with? And who's making these decisions, and where is the strategy? And I think from a baseball perspective around here, these next couple of weeks are really going to set a tone for what's going to be happening around here for the next 3, 5, 7 years for this franchise. And I don't trust Dan Duquette to make these deals. I don't think he's going to be here when any of the chickens hatch, so to speak. And I have grave concerns about Buck and Adam Jones, and Machado I feel like is gone. What are 700 or 800 at bats worth for Manny Machado over the next year and a half? And are they delusional in believing that they're a contender, because they have been recently? They're not a contending team right now, and they're not close to being a good team right now.
No, they're not. I mean, but the question you have to ask is, Machado, I mean, is he a lost cause? I mean, to me, he looks like he's depressed or something. I mean, I don't know what's going on. He just looks distracted. He's not that into it, or frustrated. I don't know what's going on. Pitchers have made an adjustment. He needs to make an adjustment. I'm just not ready to say he's a lost cause. And he's
not a lost cause, but a guy you're going to give 300 or 200 or whatever it takes. Is he a lost cause from a can he be signed by this organization in 18 months? I think that's the real question about this.
Well, they gave Chris Davis $161 million. So, there's money that can be ponied up. The question is, are you giving it to the right guy? I mean, the decision-making is frustrating to some degree in hindsight. I mean, the money that signed Trumbo could have gone to Nelson Cruz. And, the money that signed Darren O'Day was pretty close to what they, let
Andrew Miller.
Guy. Pardon me?
Andrew Miller, you mean?
Andrew Miller, right. Thank you. And so, those decisions are like, I don't know about that, but, they have put some money out, and certainly a huge contract at Davis. So I'm not sure that they're just totally saying out of the ballpark there. But, you got a guy who's younger and better. So, can he... And right now, if you deal him, I mean, he's hitting 210 or whatever it is. I mean, you're not going to get the most value for him, and he can't command $400 million when he's batting 210. I'd be surprised if he gets traded. I think some of these other pieces, Britton could be, Brock could be, the catcher could be. There's a number of things that could happen, but I don't think Manny gets traded.
John, I don't think it makes me a jerk or a horse's ass to sit here on the radio every day and say, I've been witnessing this for over 20 years now, and the Orioles usually screw these things up, and the Ravens usually find some Jeremy Maclin and figure out how to get him in here over the course of a weekend, even when other teams are bidding. You work for the Ravens, and you cover the Ravens, and we're about to get into that. I have some hope for them, and it's not 14-2 hope. It's not that they're going to definitely be in Minnesota in February when I get there, but I do have hope that they're going to be a 500 team, that they're going to be in this thing, that they're going to be playing games at Thanksgiving and Christmas that sort of matter. I don't think they're world beaters, but I do see some hope there, and I think John Harbaugh is relatively optimistic. I think most of the people I've been around in the organization over the last 90 days are pretty optimistic about this thing breaking camp next week.
Yeah, I mean they do seem to be, and I think I kind of figured out what's going on. I mean they made the decision that they finished 8-8 last year, and that I really go back to something that Eric DeCosta said in the run up to the draft, that there's really two ways to lose games in the NFL. The two main ways: number one is your quarterback doesn't play well, and number two is you can't defend the pass. You can't stop the other team. And so I think the Ravens looked at their season last year and thought, well, Joe wasn't that great last year. He's going to do better. And number two, we got to be able to stop guys. So they really invested in the defense, especially the secondary, and said, okay, we're going to stop guys this year when we're ahead, like they were in some games that they lost last year. We're going to do better. We're going to really man up at cornerback and safety, and that's what they've done. And I think that's where their optimism is based, is that there are some numbers that show that guys in their second year back from that knee surgery that Joe Flacco had, they performed better in their second year than their first. So they're going to hope, the Ravens have to hope for that. They're giving the guy a ton of money. They have to hope he's better, and that they've done what they can to fortify their defense. And those two things alone, regardless of what else happens, they feel like, well, if they can, be within the realm of normalcy and everything else, that they're going to be a better team this year. And I think that's what that optimism is based on.
He is our friend John Eisenberg, longtime columnist at the Baltimore Sun, now with the Baltimore Ravens as their lead columnist. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at @BMoreEisenberg. And, of course, you can find his book, The Streak, on Cal Ripken and Lou Gehrig and baseball's most historic record just about everywhere. Well, summer vacation's about done here, Eisenberg. I know you've been running around doing the book tour here, but we're going to be settling in for all things football, and I'm sure you're looking forward to getting back out there onto the gridiron as we all are. Hopefully we get cool, no humidity, just like we like it here in August in Baltimore, right?
Yeah, good luck with that.
Hey, man, great having you on. I hope the book's going as well as you hope it's going, and I hope that my questions are amongst the best. I know you're doing a lot.
I am doing a lot, but I appreciate it. Always glad to come on.
Rest the pipes. He is B. More Eisenberg out on Twitter. John Eisenberg, our longtime friend and mentor, and the book is The Streak. Simple enough. If you love Baltimore baseball, there's no reason in the world you shouldn't buy the new book by John Eisenberg and read up and learn. You can find me out in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day. My book, The Peter Principles, is trickling out. Chapters 10 and 11 coming out next week, as well as the audio portion here at AM 1570 and WNST.net as my wife and I celebrate our 14th wedding anniversary next week and my mom's birthday next week. So we got things going on around here, but we will get you through as well. You can always find us anytime, day or night, out on social media, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram. Luke's at the ballpark all week. He'll be out with the Ravens all next week as well, and anything you miss, you find in our morning newspaper. Comes to you at 7 a.m. each and every morning, delivered digitally, and all brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Any breaking news before the trading deadline on the Orioles side, or certainly out of Ravens camp, you'll get it first on the WNST Tech Service. That is our breaking news service. It's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard, and there's never any spam. Just like Dennis Kolotz's show, never any spam. 3 until 5, the SSV on WNSG, heard here this Thursday, and no one more excited for football season than Dennis. Well, maybe Luke is, but he's just trying to get out of the ballpark at this point. You can email me anytime, nasty@WNST.net. And you can read the Peter Principles online at WNST.net for free all summer long. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And we never stop talking Baltimore sports.